So colleagues and friends, it's a marvelous day. It's a day that we begin the celebration that leads us to April 24th of opening exercise of Happy Digital Cities, Happy Digital X. I sit here in my office outside of Boston where it's 1 degree this morning, watching the ice form on the salt water in the harbor, and think about how warm and welcoming Crawley is. This is the view I hope to have from my office in not too long when we create the Technopark and the campus. Let me explain to you a little bit how we got to Happy Digital X. We were on a pathway to call this Happy Digital Cities because we thought that one of the great obstacles facing the people of Indonesia, the government of Indonesia, was the building of new capital, and we wanted to contribute to that. But then, like many plans last year, the virus struck. And we realized that we had to broaden the view of the development of Indonesia into an economic and social development that encompasses its cities. So X stands for all of the economic, social, and welfare that happens inside a city. And by the way, alert, the next program might have a Y in it. So we want to nurture resilient leaders and multi-stakeholders to produce this happiness, this harmony that we know so well that Sherry has taught us. Next slide. So we have in our thinking about the program what I call the bookends. We have happiness, harmony with others, harmony with nature, and harmony of spirit. On the other hand, we have sustainability, largely as codified by the Sustainable Development Goals. So we're working in this space that's trying to increase happiness of individuals and collectives, and is trying to make the planet more sustainable. And this is what attracted me to Bali, to the program. There are many of us in academic around the world who want to do more to contribute to sustainability. And creating an institution that's founded on this premise is a very powerful idea. But what's the transformative engine that's going to help us to do this? In this day of 2020, 2021, it unquestionably is ICT. How will we use the ICT transformation to bring about this sustainability, this happiness in the economic domain, in the social domain of cities? And the immediate goal that, of course, you heard the minister refer to is economic recovery and then continued economic development. So we're trying to pull these pieces together to build happy, sustainable cities based on improved ICT with economic recovery and economic development as the goal. Next slide. So this has been a really fun project of bringing people together from all around the world. And I believe it's important to have fun. It's important to learning. So we said, let's not start the way traditional academics start and saying, what should we teach? Let's start at the other end of the spectrum, what we call the grand challenges, and say, what do our participants need to learn? And in this case, a number of scholarly and governmental organizations around the world have defined these grand challenges of energy, of water, of use of the land, of use of the education, of equity, and so forth. So how would we go about teaching early to mid-career young professionals in government, in industry, in social life, how to address these grand challenges? Well, we do it by creating challenge projects. These are scaled down exercises. So there might be a grand challenge of improving the life of transient inhabitants in a city, but a project is something that a group of people in the program could do in a few months, like to figure out how to count or assess the impact on the city of one neighborhood. And in order to do this, working backwards, we need skills and we need tools. So we've organized the education around these, what we call 6 threads, which teach the background, knowledge, skills, and tools. So I've described this evolution from the right to left, which is the way we designed it, define the grand challenges by working with our stakeholders, define the challenge projects by working with a narrowed down set of stakeholders, and then define the 6 threads that teach the background and skills. When the students, the participants encounter this, they go the other way. They go left to right. First, they learn the threads, which gives them skills and tools. Then they apply these to the projects, challenge projects. And then they become skilled workforce and they go out and help provide solutions to the real issues facing industry, government, and the economy. We want to build assets, human assets, social assets, natural assets, physical assets, and interestingly, we've added data as an asset. The organizations that possess and are able to manipulate and understand the data are the ones that can take advantage of the ICT transformation. That's what we're going to educate students to do at Crawley. Next slide, please. So we've identified these 6 threads, one which is, you might call a broad encompassing one that Shobi runs, called happiness, sustainability, and leadership. One that talks about the fabric of the city, the traditional role of urban designers and urban planners. One that talks about the products and services that are built inside of the cities, what entrepreneurs do and what small companies do. One that deals with the complex systems, the ones that provide infrastructure like transport and energy, but also some of the complex social services like education and health. Then there's the application-oriented ICT capabilities. We're not going to teach people how to write code. We're going to teach people how to use these tools and apply them to the solutions of society. And finally, ICT integration into the city, how you take all of these pieces and bring them together into an integrated solution. Next slide. So these are the threads looked at in a different way. We have the organizational transformation, happiness, leadership, and sustainability across the top. We have urban design. For example, a skill would be how you build consensus in a neighborhood. We have sustainable products. For example, a skill would be how you go about assessing the business aspects of your new product. We have complex systems and their services, like how you build and map the networks that operate within the city. ICT integration, the city as a system. ICT awareness and competence, not skills, but awareness and competence of manipulating data assets and so forth. And then we pull these all together into the integrated project experiences, which look at policy, projects, and roadmaps. Next slide. This is really interesting stuff. I'll tell you, I get excited even just explaining it. And I can't wait for the time next month when we start teaching it. So each one of these 6 threads has a structure and function as described here. It starts with a plenary provided by a thought leader from around the globe that we've been recruiting to provide inspiration, motivation, and a global view. Then our faculty, and usually there are 2 or 3 faculty for each thread, about 20 total from around the world, they first introduce the thread. And then we go into these 3 skill development modules, usually 3 or 4 per thread, where the skills and tools are actually taught. And then they apply these to the challenge projects, where they produce results which can be evaluated and transferred to the sponsoring agency. So each of these challenge projects is going to have a host, a stakeholder who is the partner in the project. And with the permission of Minister Lahoud, we're going to try and also have a patron from each of the projects from the government. So the government will have great visibility into what's going on and be able to move these ideas that are developed towards further development and further educational programs. Next slide. So here are some, to give you an idea of potential programs. How do we go about designing and implementing informal housing within our cities so that it provides the social services that are needed? How do we use digital tools to lessen the economic divide? How do we provide for food security and food sovereignty? How do we develop healthcare, big data, analytics? How do we use tourism, ICT as part of tourism, an important contribution to the economy of Indonesia? And so forth. So we're working with stakeholders to develop about 9 or 10 of these potential projects that the participants in the program will work on. Next slide, please. So we've assembled, this is a snapshot, we've assembled a cadre of people from around the world, and I'll just point out a few of them. So you think we're going to teach happiness. Well, happiness has a philosophical aspect, which we derive from the environment of Bali, but it also has a neuropsychological component. Elkanon Goldberg is a professor of NYU, educated at Moscow State University, who's a neuropsychologist and studies the neuropsychology of happiness. Hario Winsaro is a senior member of the faculty at ITB, Bandung, who's contributing to our understanding of cities in Indonesia. Ken Lazarus is a serial entrepreneur in Greater Boston, teaching about the business and practical aspects of entrepreneurial activity. Lauren Susskind is a professor of urban planning at MIT, a close colleague, who's going to talk about negotiation and data security and so forth. We have 20 people or so of faculty members of these types of international rank and reputation. We're going to do a great job at teaching our curriculum and who are largely responsible for developing it. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up some of the key features in case they've slipped by, as I just said, we have international high stature professors, people from all over the world will be beaming into Bali, beaming into Jakarta to participate in this program. And we have this very important and strong collaboration with Tsinghua University as an entity in Beijing, and particularly with SIGS, as represented by Dean Gao today. It is, if you didn't notice, focuses on practice. This is not an academic, a pure academic program. It's not about the theory of making people happier. It's about making people happier. We're going to do this with 80 mid-career participants and some of their supervisors to learn these 20 key skills and apply them to 10 or 12 projects that have been provided by partners in a 3-month pilot, which will eventually lead to a 9-month program, which will be, in this first incarnation, largely online, but there may be some in-person activities at the beginning and end. Happy, happy, happy. As Shobi said, that's what we try to practice. That's what we try to preach. It's about building harmony, and that's why Bali and Indonesia are important places to establish this program. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Yay, thank you so much, Ed.
Happy, happy, happy.
Happy, happy, happy. Everyone should learn to do that, the happy, happy greetings. It makes you happy instantly.
It does. It's neuropsychological.
And we
It
have
does.
a lot of ideas follows here also, so we have the wish also.
Ed, if I can ask you one question, how do you plan to deliver this? It's a big dream, and we're in the middle still of a pandemic. How do we do this?
Well, we had to make a decision about 3 or 6 months ago as to what the delivery mechanism was, and we chose to do it by all digital. So this will be taught like an online digital program that you would take, for example, from Tsinghua's program on lifelong learning or MIT's X-Pro program for online learning. So it's going to have a component of about 60 hours of synchronous online learning and about 120 hours of asynchronous, that is, participants do it as they choose to, spread over about 16 weeks.
16.
So it's a total of about 160 hours of education. 180 hours, I'm sorry. Now, if conditions in the pandemic virus allow, it's always desirable to have some in-person time when you launch a program. So we may provide an opening and a closing that have an important in-person component. But otherwise, it's going to be online. As I've been teaching online for 25 years, by the way, in programs like this. So this wasn't all just addressed as an emergency to address the pandemic. And as Tsinghua has a marvelous assortment of academic programs in Chinese and English online.
I think as we've discovered in making the program, it makes it a lot easier to draw people to contribute their teaching time, right? Because they don't have
It
to free up.
does. There's advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages is this meeting, 177 participants. If
Yeah.
we all had to fly to Jakarta for this meeting, there'd be maybe 20 or 30 of us.
Yeah, correct.
So you can convene people much more efficiently, much more effectively.
Yeah.
And we wish we hadn't discovered it this way, but it's changing the way we think about doing business around the world.
That's very true. And if it's changing business, why not change the way we teach and the way we learn, right?
That's just
So-
an extension of business.
So, perhaps just out of curiosity, since this is your lifelong career and your lifelong passion, what about this program that still excites you, aside from the happiness?
Well, I think creating programs that address the needs of society. Universities should be viewed as engines of development of society, just like good government should do, just like NGOs should do, just like Better Business for Better Life, Better World should do.
Yep.
Is that we should do our job. We should make money for our shareholders or get reelected if we're politicians, but we should do our job in a way that makes a sustainable contribution to society. And the thing that really excites me about this one is that it's about environmental sustainability. I can't tell you how many people in the last few months they've said, Ed, what are you doing these days in the pandemic? I say, I'm starting a university in Indonesia. Well, that of course sets them back. But then they say, what's unique about the university? And I say, it focuses on happiness and sustainability. And they say, can I come? To have such an organization in Bali with the support of important government officials and government policy and NGOs and so forth, it's going to be a tremendous engine of economic and social development.
All right, thank you.
Good.
So,
And Tuti asked me a question a few months ago, and I gave an answer which I've repeated several times. She says, how do you do it, Ed? How do you start from zero and make a university? And I said, one step at a time.
one step at a time. Very, very true. Thank you so much, Ed. You're staying around and you'll be part of the breakout group, correct?
Right.
So, yeah.
And by the way, I want to recognize and thank my new partner in crime, Gordon, who's coming up later. But these organizations are not built by one person or a small team. We have to put together our contributions of all of our friends and partners around the world. And Gordon is going to make an important, enormous contribution.
I believe so. We will all get to meet Gordon at the very end. So stick around. And we are going into our breakout group now. We have, thank you so much, Ed.